This is Cara Fontenot, the Fontenot Firm, and I want to continue in our What to Expect series about litigation against your employer. It's important that you understand that this is a long process if you're going to have litigation with your employer. And I want to talk to you about each of the spaces that you might be in as you go through this litigation process. So we're going to start with the beginning, and the beginning actually is when you realize that something has gone wrong at work. Now, there are a lot of things that an employer can do that violates the law. Okay, they can not pay your wages properly. They can discriminate against you. They can harass you. And there's a difference between harassment and discrimination, which we'll talk about later. But they can retaliate against you for making complaints. And so once you experience the wrongdoing by your employer, the first thing is to figure out sort of what bucket you fit in. Okay. And we'll talk about what those buckets are. But the first step is identifying that there is a problem. Okay. Because the time for you to file your lawsuit begins when you realize that there is a problem. So what are some of the types of problems that you might have that you need to be on guard for? Your pay was wrong. Okay, that could implicate wage theft. Okay, if you look at your pay and you notice that they have deducted time from you that you worked, or that they didn't pay you for overtime that you worked, then the time for you to file a lawsuit on that begins on the date of that paycheck. And it runs for 2 and sometimes 3 years, but it's best to file it within 2 years. And so if there's been a consistent pattern of them not paying your paychecks, we're only going to be able to file suit for the ones that fall within the statute of limitations. So you're going to look at the last 2 to sometimes 3 years. Okay, so looking at that, the date of the event is what matters. If it's an employment discrimination case, sometimes if it has to do with medical leave, if you're under the Family Medical Leave Act, that will have a 2-year statute of limitations. So looking at the date that you were terminated or you had something bad happen to you or they denied you your leave, you're going to look for the 2 years from that. If you have a pay claim based on your gender, then you also will have a 2-year time frame in which to file suit about that. Now, remember, each paycheck must be within the statute of limitations if you want it to be covered. So you're looking at 2 years from the date that you file your lawsuit going backwards to cover those time periods. But the vast majority of employment discrimination lawsuits are going to fall under a couple statutes that have a very short time frame. Okay, there are lawsuits under Title VII and the Americans with Disabilities Act, as well as the Age Discrimination Act, that you must file with the EEOC. And those have to be filed within 180 days of the charged discrimination. So if you have a claim of race or sex or national origin or religion or age or disability discrimination, you need to get to the EEOC within 180 days. That is almost 6 months, but sometimes, depending on the length of a month, it might not be exactly on the 6-month deadline. So 180 days from the time that you experience that discrimination, harassment, or retaliation, you have to get to the EEOC. If you do not get to the EEOC, those claims will be waived. You cannot file a lawsuit unless you get to the EEOC first. And it's not enough really to just go to the EEOC and call. You have to fill out the intake forms or the charge of discrimination in order to have your claims preserved. Now, at the Fontenot Firm, we will fill out the claims that you need to, the charge document that you need to fill out for the EEOC for you. We help you draft that, you sign it, review it, and we send it off to them to make sure that you meet the deadline. But you have, if you're our client, but you've got to meet the deadline one way or the other. It does not matter that something really bad happened to you if you don't meet the deadline and get to the EEOC on time. Okay, so that's 180 days from the charged discrimination. In our next video, I'm going to explain to you what the difference is between discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. But for right now, if you think you've experienced any of those three, you need to get to the EEOC as soon as possible. Now, it's important also to remember that not all discrimination, not all acts by your employer are illegal. It's only those that are covered by specific statutes. So if your employer just doesn't like you, you are not covered by Title VII. If your employer doesn't like you because you are Black, or you are a woman, or you are over 40, or you have a disability, you may be covered by the statutes that are enforced by the EEOC. So it's important not just to have a bad thing happen to you, it has to happen to you for an illegal reason. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So if you have questions about whether or not you've been discriminated against, you can call our office at 205-564-9005. And you can also reach out to us on the web at kyrafontenot.com.